Hey family, Joseph Baba Ifa here, connecting you to your destiny, coming at you with a new video on bush spirits. If you haven't had the opportunity, please go ahead and subscribe. Bush spirits, what are we talking about? So when we're talking about the bush, in Africa specifically, or anywhere, it could be the woods, the jungle, any type of area with a lot of shrubbery, gardens, anything like that. When we're talking about spirits, it could be our ancestors, it could be energies that have just emanated from nature initially, nothing that was necessarily born and died, just always was, right? Or we could be talking about orishas as well, the ones that most strongly occupy the bush, right? So which ones are we talking about? The first one we're going to go ahead and delve into is obviously Osain. Osain is definitely a bush spirit. He's identified with all of the herbs, so the herbs are what make up the bush, so that's where Osain is. Definitely present, especially during the day. Believe it or not, Osain actually manifests himself more during the day than at night. And if he does it at night, it's usually in his negative aspect. And the reason being is because there's another bush spirit that owns or kind of governs the forest at night. And that deity or orisha is Oro, or in Cuba known as Orum, right? He is the darkness. He is associated with the sound. He is the executioner. And what happens is at night, which is basically the darkness, which is how Oro manifests himself, he basically occupies the forest, where Osain and all those who are trying to work with Osain kind of have to retire and take a step back because the influence of Orung is now on the leaves, right? There's a perfect example of this in the Odu Oyekumeji, where it speaks of Jewesung, who a lot of people interpret as Jesus. And what happened is when he entered into the garden in the evening time, he was captured, and his mother, being that he hadn't done sacrifice beforehand, went for an emergency consultation with Orumila, where Orumila identified to save him, he had to wash his head with very specific herbs at that very moment. But the problem is the herbs were asleep because Oro had basically dominated their presence dominated them with his presence of darkness. That's why Jewesung means the herbs sleep. So if you're trying to work with herbs, definitely do it during the day. There's really no way to get around this. If Jesus or Jewesung wasn't able to be saved, please don't interact with the herbs in the evening. Not good. There's also another verse in Obedi that speaks of why we have to wait till morning for the morning dew, and Yobe also speaks of this as well. So get your herbs early, right? Botanica Candles and More has herbs. So we spoke about Osain, we spoke about Oro, and now there's these other deities, right, that are occupied in the bush, and they're known as the Shishirigu, right, or the Chichirigu, as they're known in Cuba. And these deities, you can kind of find them throughout the mythology of Ifa, but probably one of the signs where they most strongly manifested was in Odisha, right? And what happened is these guys, these deities, these little, I like to call them creatures, they're kind of like the gremlins of Ifa. And the reason I say that is because they cause havoc and mischief. It's a group of them, from what I understand, they usually run in multiples of 7, if not 7, and they basically make life very difficult. And you want to offer to them, depending on your Odu, depending on what comes out, so that you don't have them basically destroy your life. And that's really what they do. If you read the story in Odisha, the gentleman didn't perform sacrifice, or he didn't listen to his father, and the Chichiriku really made life a living hell, for lack of a better phrase, between him, his relationship, him being able to become king, his direction in life. These guys are really associated with Eshu and also very much with Osain. So they're definitely present in the forest, and they're definitely present probably at the four corners as well, but they're really associated with the forest and Osain as well. They're like his little henchmen. So definitely want to be on good terms with them. So that's another example of a bush spirit. There's also these things I've seen in traditional scripture, these deities known as Iwing, right? Now the Iwing are kind of like nymphs, from what I've been able to deduce. I haven't delved thoroughly into them, but I know they do exist, and I have seen the word before in a brief description where they occupy the forest, and they're kind of like nymphs. They cause mischief, but they kind of have other roles, and they're just like these energies that occupy the forest. So that's another example of that. They're known as the Iwing, and if anybody finds any more information on them, please go ahead and post it, and I'd love to interact with that as well. Haven't had time to really delve into them, being that it's not something that, from what I understand, you work with that much, and if you do, it's a very specialized field. So things like that really didn't make it to the New World as much. I'm sure they're very effective though. So if you find any information, please go ahead and share. we spoke about all the Yoruba and Ifa concepts when it comes to bush spirits, but I always like to make parallels, and I'm such a fan of all the traditions that made it to Cuba that, when I saw the question that the follower or the subscriber had, I wanted to really delve into another concept that I know has to do with the bush as well, and that has to do with the Yawakwa fraternity. And the Yawakwas, or the Yawakwas, or the Leopard Society, as they're known in Cuba, is an all-male fraternal society, very secret. It's probably one of the best examples of African masonry. It speaks a lot about the bush. They're from Cameroon, or Caraval, as it's known. They're known as the Caravalís or the Quiñongos. And they're very heavily present in Cuba. I'm personally not initiated in that folklore or that fraternity, but I respect it very much. I enjoy it very much. The music's beautiful, and I have a lot of very good friends that occupy that fraternity. But and by no means am I able to delve into any secrets, because I don't know any of them. But I do know that they do have this icon known as the Ireme, right? Which is basically also in Cuba known as the Diablito, which is basically, this statue or this image of, a man or an energy dressed in like this burlap sack type suit, and it has colors on it, and it has the markings of their specific potencia or juego, as it's known, or their lodge, I guess is the best way to say it. And he looks pretty diabolic. It has a face, it has eyes, it has like palm fronds, and this is the way it manifested in Cuba. If you look at it in Cameroon, with the Yawakwa society, it's kind of inverted, where the head is much bigger, and I don't know how to explain it. You definitely could look it up image-wise. Look up Yawakwa, and then look up Yawakwa Society and all these other things, or the Ireme, and the images are going to come up pretty quickly. Try not to delve into their secrets. We always like to respect everybody else's spirituality and enjoy it without profaning, right? But the reason I even bring them up is because I remember you hear these stories growing up, or you read these stories, and it speaks of the Ireme as being the devils, or the energies of the forest, and then them coming out and people being scared. So that's why people wouldn't get close to the forest in the evening, and they'd see these images of these men dressed like this, or the energies that look like that. I guess the base of the Ireme comes from trying to replicate that energy that was visible in the Cameroon forests and jungles, and that's what they're replicating. So just to give another idea of the symbology or symbolism of bush spirits and how they kind of all translate throughout Africa, there's really beautiful manifestations there. And the most important thing to recognize is that we're nature-based religion, we're an ancestor-based religion, and the forest and the jungle is a very sacred place to us because it's recognized as the place where humankind came from, right? If we came from the ocean, if we evolved, then the first place we went to was where it was, a lot of vegetation, the jungle, and then from the jungle we, morphed into modern human beings, right? Or we transitioned into modern human beings, from the fields to hunting to, so on and so forth, and living in societies and metropolises. But really good question, and one I'm pretty passionate about, because the energies that occupy the jungle, they're sacred. These are sacred grounds. I mean, this is where initiations took place. This is where a lot of really beautiful and heavy ceremonies take place. There's a lot of energies here, so you definitely always want to be around your elders so you can know how to interact properly, because if you pick the wrong herb, or you go in at the wrong time and do the wrong process, it can have really negative consequences spiritually. So have guidance, ask questions, go through your apprenticeship, really grow within the spirituality so that you're always getting the positive results from working with these energies or these places in nature, specifically the jungle and forest, right? So I hope I answered the question. Really enjoyable topic for me, because I'm a big fan of the Yawakwas, big fan of Osain, really interesting guys, and energy, and Orung, of course, and even the Shishirigus and the wings and all these things. It's very interesting topics, and a lot of things happen in the jungle and forest. So really enjoyed this question. Thank you so much for asking. You guys ask great questions every day. If you haven't had the opportunity, please go ahead and subscribe to Joseph Baba Ifa. We're growing every day. If you haven't had the chance to do your annual consultation, definitely want to get that done to know what nature and the world has in store for you this year. And Joseph Baba Ifa, Botanica Candles, and more. We appreciate you. We're here to serve. And if you guys have any questions or any inquiries, please go ahead and give us a call, and we'll be more than happy to go ahead and assist you, right? So from Joseph Baba Ifa and Botanica Candles and more, thank you so much. You guys have a blessed evening. Boru.